workshops don't work. Well, let's face it. I think that's the problem.
So hello, and welcome to Unleash Learning TV and Radio. Now, if you're watching or listening to this, I'm guessing that you want to make learning stick for everyone. And you might be working to move your school from good teaching to great teaching. Now, there's a piece of this work to both that's important to know about and use, and that's instructional coaching. Now, to help us all think about it, we've got one of the leaders of the field, Dr. Jim Knight, here on today's episode. Now, Jim's the founder and senior partner of the Instructional Coaching Group. He's also a research associate at the University of Kansas Center for Research on Learning. He has spent more than 2 decades studying professional learning and instructional coaching, and he's here to help us all think about instructional coaching and how to use it to help move schools from good to great and help make learning stick for everyone. Here we go. Jim, welcome to Unleash Learning TV.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Different time zones, different weather, but we're here together, and I'm super excited about it.
It's probably 8 Celsius outside. It's cold.
That's cold. Yeah, that's cool. So, Jim, what we do at Unleash Learning, which we were talking a little bit about, is we really work with schools that are working to move from good teaching to great teaching school-wide. And a lot of the schools, there's like 3 categories. There's probably more categories, but they're either knowing they're really struggling with teaching and learning. Some of the schools are really ready to put a common language that kind of is beyond strategies in place, so a system about it. And the third one really is they know they're doing well, but they know they can go to the next level. Instructional coaching plays an important role in that, especially around year 2 of the process that they're on. And so I think your expertise is going to really help our audience be thinking about the ways they use instructional coaching and know about instructional coaching. So my first question, which I'm sure you get all the time, is what's the difference between mentoring and instructional coaching?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be like a politician and use this question to answer it the way I want to answer it. So kind of ignore the question and give you my answer, because I don't really feel I feel reserved about commenting on mentoring. So I thought I'd tell the history of instructional coaching, a very abbreviated version, and that might clarify instructional coaching. Then we can say a bit about mentoring. But I started out as a professional developer sharing these strategies in Canada. I'm Canadian. I grew up in Ontario, and what I found was my professional development was useless. I mean, people wrote nice things on the evaluations, but 0 people changed. And so Michael Fullen was at the University of Toronto. That's when I learned about Margaret Wheatley from him. And I studied with Michael. He got me thinking about a lot of different things. I read Peter Block and others, and Thomas Sergiovanni. And I read everything Michael had written up to that point. And he's probably the world's leading expert in educational change. And I became convinced that the way forward was to have full-time professional developers who partner with teachers. And I initially saw them as translators. They were making knowledge actionable, and they were helping teachers use them in their classroom. So they were taking, just like a translator translating a text from one language to another, or one culture to another, they were taking the ideas and helping teachers use them in the school. And I called those people learning consultants back in the 90s, wrote about them briefly. And then in 1999, we got a big grant and we changed the term to instructional collaborator. And then I submitted an article about instructional collaborators. When it came back, I said, this was around 2003, I said, I'm going to change the name to instructional coach. And that was the first article on instructional coaching. And a few years later, I wrote a book called Instructional Coaching, which was the first book with instructional coaching in the title that I know of. And I can still remember the day I met somebody who said, I'm an instructional coach, and they weren't on our team. Everybody, the only ones I ever knew worked for us. And in that journey, what we learned is, first off, an awful lot about motivation and change, and that telling people what to do isn't that effective. The old saying is, when I insist, you will resist. And so my dissertation was actually on what's called the partnership approach, positioning yourself as an equal. And that partnership approach is, the myths about it are twofold. Sometimes the idea is, well, instructional coaches tell teachers what to do. And another one is instructional coaches don't tell teachers what to do.
Mm.
But we're somewhere in between. We position the teacher as a partner. That is, they're the decision maker in the change. But we also don't hold back on sharing ideas. If we see something, we'll say, let me share something and you tell me what you think. Is it okay with you if I share this idea? You tell me what you think. So we don't tell the teacher what to think. We ask them to make the decision. And the reality is, people can deny that, but the reality is that people will make a choice. If they don't choose to do it, it's not going to happen. And so along the way, there's a whole bunch of things we learned. The power of video to help people grow. I wrote a book called Focus on Teaching, which kind of describes that. The development of instructional playbooks, a whole bunch of other things. And so I'd say we landed on a definition that instructional coaches partner with teachers to help them get a clear picture of reality, to set a goal, to identify a strategy, and then to make adaptations until they hit the goal. So it's an adaptive model where people modify. It's different every time in every classroom, but it is driven by a change you want to see in kids. Now, if you take that history and think about the story of what we're telling, whereas a mentor could actually be an instructional coach. So it depends on what the mentor's role is and what they do. But to me, where mentoring really works well is where I have a person who's an expert and I go to them with a felt need. And I say, I really need help with this, whatever it might be, organizing my time or whatever. And then the mentor can share their ideas. And we would say if the mentor works from the partnership approach, positioning the other person as a decision maker, respecting their intelligence, they're going to be more successful. Instructional coaches generally are peers. They have expertise, but they don't act like experts. And mentors can take that approach, but sometimes mentors they have expertise and they act as experts. So I guess the other thing I'd say that coaching usually follows a cycle, and mentoring is not necessarily like that. So that's my best bet at trying to show the difference.
I think that helps. I think it definitely does. And you allude to it a little bit in the next question, I think, is that what kind of professional learning do people need to be instructional coaches? And now that's a huge question, I'm sure. But what are some of the things that they need to be in terms of skill sets or knowledge to be effective in the
Right.
work that they do?
So I have a book called The Definitive Guide to Instructional Coaching. I'm not trying to like publicize my book, but this is where the ideas come from.
Yeah.
And I organize it into three parts. One part is who I am. The second part is what I do. And the third part is where I work. And the who I am is about my beliefs and my skills and my strategies as a leader, leading myself and leading other people. The beliefs are, I don't think I'm better than the other person. Skills are primarily the way I listen and ask questions, questions that communicate respect and communicate that I think you have valuable things to say. I love Michael Bungay Stanier's question. You've probably thought a lot about this. What do you think you might do? But good questions actually bring people together because they show the other person, I think you have things of value to say. They embody curiosity. And then leadership is really about when you're leading yourself, it's, what you want to accomplish. And then leading others is being a multiplier, balancing ambition and humility. There's certain things. Now, what coaches do, which is another part. So the first three things are my beliefs, my skills, and my leadership strategies. The second part is the coaching cycle we follow. We have a thing called the impact cycle. You need some kind of process to take you. Basically, the process is where am I now? Where do I want to get to? And how am I going to get there? And how do you take teachers through that process in a way that's consistent with partnership? And then in order to make that work, you need to be able to gather data. Data, as the saying goes, data makes the invisible visible. Data helps teachers set goals and monitor progress. And then you need a way to get to the goal. That's the strategies. That's the instructional playbook. So second set of things you need to know is what's my coaching cycle? How do I gather data? And what strategies are highest impact in terms of helping people hit those goals? And that's what I do. And then the third part is where I work. And you need a system that has a learning architecture that supports coaches and teachers. And that's kind of your thing, but it's creating a system where ideally when you have instructional coaches, if they're well connected, if they're sort of wired together, every time a teacher learns something from a student, that should go to the coach and that should go across the school in a heartbeat. That's ideally, but it's going to be hard for coaches to succeed if there isn't a system in place that gives them the time and the support that they need to do, a principal that supports them and understands what they do, and teachers who understand it, because it's coaching should make your life easier and help you reach more kids. And when it's supported and clearly communicated with somebody who's got the 7 success factors, it should be a pretty easy buy-in. It's going to make my life easier and help me reach more kids. And it's actually kind of enjoyable and it's learning embodied in our conversation. It sounds great.
Yeah, it does remind me that what the Unleashed Learning System does is create that common language and shared mission system. And so what I've heard coaches say is it makes our collective job easier because there's this shared understanding. And when I'm working with someone or collaborating with someone, they're already thinking about what part of the system they're struggling with or what they're doing well with. So it's why we wanted to interview you. So Jim, one of the challenges that principals tell me all the time is that they will, this may sound patronizing, I don't mean it that way. They might upskill folks and have instructional coaches working with folks, do professional learning, and then the staff leaves. So all the intellectual capital goes. And what they're trying to do is elevate the entire school. So how does a principal, how does she or he sounds weird, but work with instructional coaching, knowing that people are leaving, but they want to elevate the school?
Well, I'm reminded of that old saying, if you think education's expensive, try ignorance.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't justify in my mind not having people grow and develop. At our little company, the Instructional Coaching Group, which is, we're not a not-for-profit, we're what's called a B Corp. So we're an organization that's certified as a force for good. That's what a B Corp is, a benefit corporation. We expect people to move on because we want them to grow and develop. And if they reach a point where we're not fulfilling for them, we don't want them to stay around. So I think you want to create an environment where everybody's engaged in continuous improvement, and that and then we celebrate people moving on. If they have a greater opportunity, a better chance to move, let's go. But on the other hand, if people are moving on all the time, I'd want to find out what's going on, because very few people leave our company because they have a chance to grow. They're a part of it. They know they're making a difference in the lives of children. And there are some things you can do, though, and this may be also things that you do, but this idea of an instructional playbook, the instructional playbook is a continuously improved document that's essentially a receptacle for organizational learning about what good teaching looks like. And so over time, you learn, every time a coach works with a teacher, there's a chance to improve the way they describe the strategy. We create documents that they're communication documents, but they sort of increase the likelihood of a deep knowledge on the part of the coach. So the instructional playbook is a really important way in which you at least keep some knowledge around, the knowledge about what good teaching looks like in this particular context.
I think it's true. And also that lowers cognitive load, because when that's in place, what I've seen is it just lowers the cognitive load, boosts the impact, which connects to the reason why most people are in the position in the first place, why they're trying to do this work. So, okay. So I know, and you, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but what's your answer to that question when they ask you that?
Well, from an Unleashed Learning perspective, what we say is we're not, which might sound, we're not working on an individual level. We're looking at a school-wide level. So when the school-wide level, we're working from a cohort approach of change. So we're working from a cohort. So if you are going to lose people, because that's what happens, but you're working from a systems perspective rather than just the individual perspective all the time. And sometimes in our profession, we're having teachers go just to individual professional development and then they leave and we spend all this money. But this is a much more cohort approach to thinking about it. And also, when you've got a system in place, if someone does leave, the system doesn't change. Right. And from a Margaret Wheatley perspective, what you said is why we put a system and systems thinking in place is the school has to be able to absorb new knowledge easily and seamlessly rather than just trying to keep up with the latest thing. And that's what we put into place. So yeah, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have what Peter Senge would call a learning organization, it should be exciting. Yeah. People should feel swept up in that. I mean, learning is one of the great parts of being a fulfilling life, to be a learner. And if you're in an organization where you're always learning, now granted, You want stability too, but it's exciting, especially when your work is driven by the making a difference in kids' lives, So if you have a true culture of learning, it's going to take a lot for you to want to leave, you know, unless you need a different thing. And like I said, I kind of want people to feel the freedom to do whatever is going to be most fulfilling for them.
Well, it also, we were saying before we started about Margaret Wheatley, and I think it's her quote. I've said it to her, and I can't remember if she said to me, it's actually someone else said this or she said it, but she says, a living system is a learning system.
Uh,
And so the thing about the unleashed learning system is it allows them to organize whatever comes to them. That lowers. So a living system is a learning system, and the places where learning's not happening, you can feel it. It's a stagnant kind of,
mm,
that kind of stuff. So that's the other thing, back to Margaret, but a living system is a learning system. And those are vibrant places to be that I've
mm.
noticed. So well, that kind of is a nice transition to, I think, one of both of our heroes, Parker J. Palmer. And I got to interview him for Unleashed Learning TV. I think last year was the season premiere, and he was one of my heroes. And he speaks, as you know, a lot about who the teacher is matters, who we are as leaders matters. So you alluded to in the first question, but what do instructional coaches need to know about themselves to be effective?
That's such a great question. And Parker is a person that I think is just amazing. We have an award every year at our little company, and it's called the Don Deschler Leadership Award. And Parker was one of the winners of the award. And we give it to someone where we say we wouldn't be who we are if it wasn't for that person.
Wow.
So that's how. And that I did a podcast with him a couple years ago, and it was from that award. I guess I might change my mind tomorrow on this question. It's a really good question because honestly, I don't really know. I mean, I just did a podcast with Joelle and Killian about the very question of what's my identity.
Mm,
And I kept, what's that saying? I forget who said it, but I opened a door and inside there were 100 closed doors. Like I feel like I have a lot to learn about identity, but this is my answer today. One of them, I think you have to ask yourself deeply, like look in the mirror, ask, why do I want to be an instructional coach? And if you want to be an instructional coach because it feels good to have power over people,
mm,
I don't think it's the right choice.
mm,
I think you should want to be an instructional coach because you have an attitude of benevolence towards the people you work with. You want what's best for them and you want what's best for kids. And a lot of people will justify power over
mm,
by saying, well, research says, or there's this hat, but really what matters is that student learning in that class, because I don't care what research says, local validity trumps any other kind of validity anytime. Is it helping me reach kids? So the first thing I'd say is, why am I doing this? And if it's giving me a dopamine hit to have power, then I think it's the wrong thing. The second thing I would say is reflecting on what's blocking me from having compassion towards the other person.
mm,
And to me, compassion is like today, I might change this tomorrow, but it's understanding the force for good inside the other person I'm talking to. Everybody has this thing inside them that they want to be seen, they want to be heard. They may not want to be seen and heard, but they want to make a difference in some way. And and at the same time they feel frustrated they're not where they want to be. And part of that is people suffer. And so I think to look for where is the force for good inside this person and how are they suffering? What's getting in the way? And this is probably way too weird, but I think when you can really see another person's drive for good and the struggles they're having and have complete appreciation, acceptance, love for
mm,
that other person. And part of loving the other person is to see the fact of their struggles. And when you can not try to fix them, not try to solve them, just be there for them. I think if you have that kind of relationship where you are respectfully benevolent towards the person, you accept them, and you work from a place of respect, then I think the rest can take care of itself. But
mm.
if you're going into coaching, it's going to be kind of fun to tell teachers what to do. They don't know what they're doing. I know the research. I've been sick of what's happening in this school. This has to change. And we often say, let's just do what's best for kids is our way of, it's just code for let's do it my way. I think if that's your approach, it's going to be hard because to move forward, I think we have to see the humanity of others and not bully them or even unconsciously bully them. I think you have to start with compassion and love, and that, as corny as that sounds.
I don't think it sounds corny. It also, what it, it talks a lot about, we talk, unless we'll talk about this kind of delivery model of education compared to the kind of model that makes learning stick. And part of that is who the educator is, who the leader is.
Mhm.
And so you're talking about what are my values? How well do I, what I heard you say when you had that podcast interview, like you went into the door and there were many doors, but
Mhm.
it's know to go into the doors. And
Mhm.
so it just makes me think about who we are and that kind of investigation, which is, Parker and many people's discussion. So I've got one last question, and I got rapid fire question for you. So what we do at Unleashed Learning is we embed a holistic and inclusive teaching and learning system, which includes a teaching and learning mission. And the mission informs the pedagogical approach in many kinds of ways, and it creates a common language. And it creates a common language with everyone at the school. And a lot of times teachers or leaders will quickly go, oh, it's this part of the ship, if you will, that I'm having a hard time with, right? So how does having a common mission or system, teaching and learning system in place, impact instructional coaching? And you did allude to that, rather
Mhm.
than it's just a bunch of strategies and everyone's doing different things and that kind of stuff. How does having a framework around that school inform instructional coaching?
Yeah, I think it has to be a common mission. And and again, expertise, it can be used in two ways, or many ways, but it could get in the way, it could be helpful. But a genuine mission is, I guess, what we would call collective efficacy, which is that we all know why we're here. We know what we're trying to do. Susan Rosenholtz, a long time ago, did this study in Tennessee, and she wrote it up in a book called Teacher's Workplace.
Mm,
And she said, she talked about moving schools and stuck schools.
mm,
And she said, in a moving school, you have a shared sense of purpose. There's collaboration, because collaboration is happening. Skills improve because skills improve. Students do better because students do better. We're more motivated to do the work, which means it's easier to buy into this shared vision, which is not a sort of a mission statement. It's just a shared sense of purpose.
mm.
And she said the opposite true. She said in what she calls a stuck school, where there isn't growth, there isn't a shared sense of purpose. People don't collaborate. Skills don't change. People lose their enthusiasm. And she said, in a stuck school, if somebody succeeds, people try to drag them down. They don't win. They don't share the win. And she said, a person will be a better teacher just by virtue of where they are. If you take a teacher from a moving school, put her in a stuck school, she'll have to fight to flourish. If you take a teacher from the stuck school, put her in a moving school, um, they're gonna get better just by virtue of where they are. Well, I'd rather be a coach in a moving school if I could just, it's going to be I'm going to have more impact because there's a whole different setting. So I think mission is a part of culture, the culture of the organization, and if a coach is in a moving environment, they're going to be more successful than if they're in a stuck environment. That's my thought about that.
I love it. I love it. I did skip a question. I do want to ask this question because Margaret's on the list. But Margaret talked a lot about when I think it was over dinner, or I don't if I interviewed her, but she was talking about the culture we're in is things that would take 4 days. Now people want in a half an hour. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of reasons for why that's happening from her standpoint, which it isn't the most positive news when she explains it.
Yeah, well, workshops don't work. Well, let's face it. I think that's the problem. If I'm going to have to go to something that's not going to work, keep it as short as possible.
Mm.
Why do I want to sit there for days? I mean, you literally start to forget it before the workshop's over. 3 days, 4 days later, it's gone. You might remember a little bit. If you implement what you learn in the workshop, you have to reteach yourself.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I want as little pain as possible. Life is short. I don't want to waste my time doing stuff that doesn't work. Now, workshops can create awareness.
Mm,
Workshops can give people ideas, but real implementation, well, the coach is the memory for the teacher.
mm.
And so you can go in there and get the awareness, but then the coach sits down and meets with the person. And I think the issue is it a genuine, authentic learning experience that's helping me reach more kids? Most teachers,
Mm.
their driving force is to make a difference in the lives of kids. If this coach can help me reach more people, I'll do it. And it comes down to, there's a book called The Influencer by Patterson, about the same people who did, I think, Crucial Conversations. And they say people will do something if it's worth it and if they can do it. And so I think if the coaching helps people reach more kids and it helps give teachers the support they need to flourish, they're going to sign up. And if it's a waste of their time, they're right to resist. Life is too short. So I think that's the issue. It's not so much. Now, I'm with Margaret on the idea of fragmentation. She quotes Archbishop Desmond Tutu saying it's a radical brokenness in all of existence. Things are kind of falling apart. And I think she's right. But I think the partnership approach we're talking about is a way of healing that radical brokenness because we see each other as brothers and sisters.
And also the consistency creates the stabilization. And also, I just partly, a lot of the educators are like, oh, one more thing, this will go away as well. And so that's the kind of sometimes the cynicism we've got to get over before. And those, I think about the relationships too in the world we're living in to build that kind of
Right.
capacity we're
Right.
talking.
One coach I work with in Lander, Wyoming, came up to me and said, "You won't believe what this teacher said." What did she say? She said, "You too shall pass."
Yeah.
So it's kind of metaphorically depressing, but nonetheless, there is that. But I think if it's worth it and they can do it, word will spread. Word spreads really quickly in a school. You waste my time, people will know. You help me reach more kids, people will know. You respect me, people will know.
Well, that brings us to our rapid fire questions. We just have three. And if I can ask you these, we ask lots of our guests this. It's stuff we ask with the work we do as well. So the name, Jim, of a favorite teacher.
Yeah, that's a long list, but I have to pick Don Deschler. We named our leadership award after him. He was my professor at the university, my dissertation advisor, and he taught me. He had enormous impact on education. He was chosen as one of the 10 most important people in special ed in the 20th century in the United States. But all he knows about education pales in comparison to what he taught me about how to be just a decent human being. He's going to Ghana. I don't know, he's quite a bit older than I am. He's going to Ghana to lead a whole initiative there right now. And he is, when you talk to him, you feel better after the conversation every time. And I had hundreds of them.
Maybe this is the same person, but who most influenced your learning history?
Yeah, I've got a few people from books. So I thought I would say certainly Don is a teacher. Michael Fullen was kind of my teacher at the University of Toronto. Peter Block's book Stewardship was a big influence on my thinking. And off the top of my head, those are people that would be really important. Fullen taught me so much about change. He too was incredibly kind and generous to me. He's like this world-renowned expert, and he took time when I was, you know, just starting my doctorate at University of Toronto, and then I switched to Kansas. He was incredibly helpful. So those are people that come to mind.
And of all the things you teach, Jim, the books, the conferences, the keynotes, all the stuff you do, what's one thing you really want to get to stick for everyone?
I think it's that to treat other people as a partner,
Mm.
which is to say to see them, listen to them, ask them questions, not try to control them, but actually try to interact with them in a way that's respectful, engage in dialogue with them in the way Paulo Freire or others would talk about. That is to see their brains as being as important as mine, to not thinking I'm better than that person,
Mm.
uh, to work from a place of benevolence and humility is not weak. It's actually the way forward. And in this time of we're living in the United States, it's crazy how polarized things are. And this time forward, the way forward is not pushing harder. It's pausing to say, well, what do you think? It's pausing to say, You probably thought a lot about this. What do you think you might do? It's pausing to listen and hear it first, and to being open to being wrong. Doesn't mean you don't advocate for what you have to say, but just let go of the need to control somebody and have a real conversation where you have the courage to let them change you. So to me, partnership is not weak. Partnership is actually what we need. It's the way forward, and it comes from a place of humble strength, if such a thing is possible. That's my idea.
Well, on that note, what a great way to end it and to say thanks for being one of those leaders who are showing the way for us.
Yeah, I'm just part of something bigger than me, that's for sure. It's a pleasure, though.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
So I could have spoken to Jim for hours, but I got to stop and we want to hear from you. So we want to know what's one big takeaway from Jim's discussion with us. So we'd love you to join the conversation at the magical land of Unleashed Learning. And while you're over there, grab your free kit, your info kit for Unleashed Learning for Schools. It's a new way forward for a more holistic and inclusive approach to great teaching and learning. And our next cohort happens the 6th of August here in Australia, or January 2025 for USA schools.